morning everyone, how is it going? Eric here, and today we're going to talk about Octopath Traveler 2 because nothing else is happening at the moment. It's a really quiet week, and honestly, everyone is just talking about Labo VR. I'm sick of it. I'm stuck in my own glass cage of emotion here, and all I want to do is talk about some news. Well, in the meantime, until another direct rumor comes up, we're stuck here talking about Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, which is not the name of Octopath Traveler 2. That, my friends, is the name of the mobile game. Yay! Now, despite my sarcastic and childlike, this actually might be good news because, first of all, we did actually learn that maybe Octopath Traveler 2 will be here sooner than we think. And maybe this game will come to Switch. I mean, who knows? I don't think it would be a bad thing if it came to Switch. As long as they got rid of like the microtransaction, it might be okay. All right, before we dive deeper into the second one, we should quickly mention that this other Champions of the Continent game is it's a prequel to the first game. I don't know how that actually gets set up because they haven't really gone into enough detail yet, and it's all just Japanese at the moment, so who knows what's going on. But it is a prequel to the first game, and you play as 8 characters at once instead of 4, so that really actually kind of sounds interesting. I'd like to know more about that. And if we kind of grab Square Enix, throw them down under a microscope, and look a little bit closer here at their history, you can kind of see that they do have a trend of bringing some of their mobile games, not all of them because they just have way too many mobile games, but some of their mobile games to the Switch. Like in particular, Final Fantasy Pocket Edition ended up becoming the unpocketed edition and coming to Switch, so who knows, we might get this as well. So then why do I think that Octopath Traveler 2 is not that far away? Well, there's a good reason for that, and that is when they let it slip that this mobile version is coming, they basically let out an apology tweet, which they should. Not really, just, okay, settle down. This apology tweet basically just apologized for those of us waiting for a console Octopath Traveler game, just stating that production will take a little while longer, which that means that there's production? Now your guess is probably as good as mine as far as how long will a little while longer be. It could be a few months, it could be a few years. One thing I can add just to sprinkle on top here is to say that I don't think it's going to be any time that soon. I mean, it's unlikely for them just to shove it out the door right now anyway. But in the next few months, like in July actually, there is a PC version that they let slip that they are releasing. So one, that's right, Octopath Traveler is coming to PC as well, the original game. So now it's multi-platform. Who knows what that means for the future? Actually, on that, it could be good things. You know, that's good things. The more people out there that play Octopath, the more chances we have of seeing this game get more additions, sequels, numbers in the future. Numbers, Eric, numbers. So yeah, we'll just have to play the wait and see game to see what happens there. But the game did come out in July last year, so 2018, which means that it's only been a year since the last game came out. Probably, like, we might get an announcement at C3, maybe not. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't know what I'm adding to this conversation, but you're still here for it, so let's get into the interesting stuff. Now, I just recorded the Mario plus Rabbids one before this, and I'm not sure if I'm going to release this one first, so I probably shouldn't be talking about it. But either way, I thought we'd do the same thing for this, where for the last part of this conversation, let's just have a casual conversation about what we would like to see in Octopath Traveler 2. Eric. So to look at this game, there were lots of different places that they could obviously grab and improve for different reasons, and obviously people's perspective is going to be like, oh, this I like this and I didn't like this, but you like this and I didn't like this, so let's fight about it. But I thought a more interesting way to do this, rather than just look at what was wrong with the game, why don't we look at what we can actually add to it? And to do this, I went back to Super Nintendo RPGs. Yes, Super Nintendo RPGs, am I right, people? And the first game I actually looked at is probably not a really well-known one, but it's Secret of Evermore. Similar to the Secret of Mana series, but it was a game that I grew up with, and I didn't grow up with Secret of Mana. So we're talking about this one. Now, something that Secret of Evermore did really right is that its setting was set from like all over the place. At one point, you're back in the Jurassic with dinosaurs, and then you're like in the future, and you're just going all over the shop with really unique and diverse settings and different disgusting monsters and different things like that. The setting is everything in this game, and I feel like that's where Octopath Traveler 2 can improve itself. It can make itself better in the next game by not locking itself down to fantasy, not saying old school fantasy, wood, snow, done, send it out the door, caves, we're good. You know, open up, diversify yourself a little bit here, and let's say, whoa, why not have some futuristic city buildings? And why not have some grotesque grottos and whatever else in this game. You know, there is so many different locations you can put in a game like this. To limit to yourself to real world locations but set in an olden day, I feel like they're just limiting themselves too much. Speaking of breaking the limits, no, not Final Fantasy. I'm actually going with the illusion of time and illusion of Gaia, depending on what part of the world you live in, or Lufia. What these games did really well, and where Octopath can break into some new limits here, is the puzzles in the world design. Octopath Traveler was very much, here's a straight dungeon, maybe some mazy-like type zones where you can wander yourself around, but they never ever offered, maybe they did a little bit, but they didn't offer me enough puzzles to be like, okay, think now, Eric. Think about how you're going to get through this. Don't just walk through it until you eventually bump into every treasure chest there is. There were plenty of old school RPGs that did this, and even the old school RPGs that this takes inspiration from did this really well themselves. Maybe not as well as some of the ones that I just mentioned, but a lot of them did. And so I feel like taking inspiration for that, taking what these games did right, is something that Octopath should be doing if that's what it's trying to draw its inspiration from. And another well of inspiration that I could just fall into and never come out until I finish the game eventually would be Mario RPG. Now the thing about Mario RPG, apart from being a fantastic game, is that it's similar to kind of Final Fantasy here. It had kind of mini games scattered throughout the world. I think Mario RPG went a little bit more heavily with these mini games than something like Final Fantasy until the later games. But Mario RPG's well, but just kind of scattered with these mini games. You couldn't like go 10 minutes without bumping into the minecart or bumping into the, what are those little things that play notes? The jellyfish frog things. Tadpoles. Mini games, they do add this kind of level of world building that you can't get from other areas. So that's something that I'd love to see. Now we did touch on Final Fantasy there, and I want to touch on that again, because that's one of the last things that I think they need to take inspiration from again, because obviously that's where they drew most of it from, but they kind of didn't suck it dry, and they need to suck this a little bit more dry here. They really need to get the straw out and go, connected stories. Yes, connected stories is what they need. The stories were all kind of separated, and I get the goal, the idea they were going for there. It didn't pay off, in my opinion anyway, in the execution. And so I feel like having more interconnected stories, more party members that feel like they're talking to each other, not just little spices of cutscene here and a spice of cutscene there that doesn't actually feel like a cutscene where they're talking to each other. Connect the dots, people, and you'd have a great game. All right, my last ones here. They kind of draw inspiration, not from the old school, but actually from the new school for once here. The new school of Skyrim, Morrowind, Elder Scrolls RPGs. And I think where I'm going with this is, so in Octopath, you had these things called field commands. And what these field commands did were, depending on what like class you were or character you were, you could do different things, like you could go up and steal from people with a percentage chance, or you could barter from people, or you could find stuff on the ground, you could talk people into following you. Just these different things that you could do that were really actually quite interesting, and I did enjoy that part of it. But I think part of the problem is that it was tied to your level of your character, and so because of that, the field skills that you did kind of felt a little bit shallow. I think something that might improve these field skills, and again going back to the Skyrim well of goodness here and drawing from it again, whatever I'm doing here, just in the game. So in Skyrim, each class, or let's call it for the sake of this one, field command, had its own kind of skill tree, and that could level up separately depending on how much you did that. I think these field commands maybe could benefit from doing something the same. The more you steal from people, the better you get at it. And the more you do segues, the better you get at it. Like this perfect segue into talking about the monsters on the world map. Now, I wouldn't say that this draws particularly from one RPG, it kind of just draws from RPGs with monsters on the map. But that's what I would like to see. I don't mind random encounters, but I'd almost prefer just to see the monsters running around on the map. And even if you look at the footage of this mobile version, they actually have a point where, I don't know if it's just because it's a boss, but they have a monster on the map that you can literally see. Now, actually being able to dodge the monsters instead of walking around with my eyes closed going, where's the next monster? I think that would be a pretty big improvement for the game, and something that I would like to see them put in there, only because I'm not a huge fan of random encounters. I get their point, but to be perfectly honest, they just get annoying. Especially when a game is focused on exploration. Find all the corners of this dungeon and all the chests that hide within it. Yet you're gonna bump into monsters that you don't actually want to fight every couple of seconds. That just gets a little bit on my tedious nerves, and I'd like that to stop. Now that is gonna do it for our Octopath chat of chattiness, but what I would like to know from you is, what would you like to see in an Octopath Traveler 2? If you played the original one, what would kind of tickle your fancy bones and say, oh, that would be fun diddly done, Eric? tell me down in the comments below. And if you liked what happened here today, which I don't know how you wouldn't, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, be very much appreciated. And remember, for great Nintendo entertainment, you can count on me. For today's end screen, I just want to say that my voice is starting to go. We have some bad lighting and I'm sitting in front of the editing computer because it is 2 o'clock in the morning. Help. Yeah, I was unorganised today. I tried to get 2 videos done at once and yeah, they kind of threw me way behind and didn't end up getting 2 done. So here we are. Thank you for joining me for the end screen. I hope that some of you remember these old school end screens that used to be like this back in the day. Anyway, goodbye.